Today we're going to learn how you can drop some bombs if white plays passively in the Caro-Kann. So let's just dive in. So we get through the standard opening moves here, and we play this advanced variation with c5, and it's like, this is super cool. Like, very frequently we get awesome positions here. I like this a lot better than the traditional bishop f5 move. So f3, we just take, and previously I did a video about how dangerous this is, but I also want to show you that, like, if white doesn't know what they're doing in this opening, it doesn't deserve any respect at all. So we play knight c6, and the dangerous line is when they take or even just play knight to c3. But here, my opponent just dropped back, which is kind of a silly looking move. Like, it's just a total waste of tempo. And it gives me bishop g4 with this pin and immediate pressure on the e5 pawn out of the gate. So bishop b5, because everybody plays bishop b5. And here, I just played e6. Now, actually, it's better to play this queen a5. And the point is that we're forcing this knight to c3. And eventually, we're going to get some pressure against the c2 pawn. Let's take a look at what that might look like. So, for example, queen a5, we knight c3. We protect our pawn. And now, after something like castles, we can just play knight ge2. And after bishop d2, we need to drop our bishop back because knight takes d5 is a threat there. And say they play this sort of typical, we get this, and now queen takes f3. We go ahead and put additional pressure on the e5 pawn, and then say rook here to defend it. Now we have bishop to e7, and just natural moves from white. And eventually they're going to capture. And the point is that we have this sort of niggling pressure on c2, which makes this knight pretty immobile, and we can just pile up on it. So, for example, like this, and say they try to defend the pawn. Now we get this idea d4, which is kind of a nice idea, and maybe something that you wouldn't feel comfortable playing, but this is totally fine. The point is that we're going to drive this knight away, and we're going to break through, and the whole queen side's going to shatter. So, for example, knight e4, we can just grab the pawn. Now, if they trade queens, of course we're happy because we get a rook on the second rank. So they need to take our pawn back, but now we get rook to c4. We're really jumping in with our pieces. And this knight still needs to be careful because this diagonal is quite weak, and we might end up with all kinds of serious issues here. So queen to e3 is kind of forced, but now we can grab this pawn. White can take back, of course, but then we just bring our pieces in sort of casually. And we really have a dominant position here because of how active all of our pieces are. The queen here, we're not worried about this because we can always move out of the way, put pressure here. We have pressure on this bishop. White's pieces just stand a little bit loose. The best they can do is knight d6, where we can just take it and take back. And we don't necessarily want to grab the pawn just yet because checks are a little bit annoying on the back rank. But we can go ahead and double on this rank. The queen kicks us out. We can just drop out of the way. Now we're still threatening to grab this bishop. We're threatening to grab this pawn. We're threatening to grab this pawn. We have some checks. We have a fantastic position here. Say, just a sample line, something like this. We're not actually that worried about this check anymore because we can always just drop back. Or actually, now that the queen's on f6, it's defended square, we can drop back that way. Now we can just casually trade, and we're just up a clean pawn, and we still have pressure on the 7th rank. This pawn's still not really capturable. I mean, taking this guy is really not great. We'll just grab this one. We still have this option of coming on the 2nd rank. White's king is really, really weak. Anyway, here's just a sample line of why this queen a5 idea is really, really strong, and probably something you want to go for. Anyway, I had a different approach. So I just played e6 immediately, and so the kick, I take, and I put the queen on c7, trying to apply immediate pressure here. There's not really any super great ways to defend this pawn. Bishop to f4 is what my opponent tried, and now here's where we actually get to drop a bomb. This is such a cool idea that I found when I was doing some analysis and on a different game, and it's g5. This is such a cool looking move. The point is that we want to attack the bishop, which is the only thing defending the e5 pawn. Now, my opponent chose to take, which is not great. It's better to drop back. So, for example, drop back to h2. And we still have some ideas here. The point is that we've opened the g7 square for this bishop, but even more so than that, if white were to castle kingside, we're ready to go with an attack. So we play knight e7, and now say they castle, well, now we can just hit him with h5 out of the gate. And you may say, what's wrong with this f6 square? This is looking a little weak here. And actually, this probably is the best move for white. But after queen f6, we just have rook g8. No big deal. we're ready to play g4 and start crashing lines up. So c4 makes sense from white. They want to break open the center as quickly as they can while our king is still there. But there's really not anything that they can do. We have rook g6. The king's forced to go back. Now g4, we take here. And we've already opened this file up, and we can maybe start to shuffle our pieces over. So, for example, queen b3, d4 is super key move. The point being that we're going to make sure that the c file stays closed, because after, say, rook d1 attacking it, we're going to castle kingside, and we have an overwhelmingly huge advantage here with this g5 idea. This is a super sweet idea. Now, what happens if white doesn't castle queenside? Say, instead of knight e7, after knight e7, say they play knight to d2, and their plan is, well, I'm not going to castle over here into this g file. That's ridiculous. Well, no big deal. We go bishop g7. We're putting some pressure on this pawn here, and this is still really difficult for white to attack, or sorry, for white to defend this. We still have ideas of playing here. This pawn on g5 is really nice because it stops a pawn from ever coming to f4 to defend this, and this bishop's really out of play now. It's stuck defending this guy over on this side of the board, and it really doesn't have a good way to get back into the game. So white castles kingside, or queenside. We just play a6, sort of forcing this bishop to make a decision. They really don't have anything better than to take. Otherwise, this pawn does fall. And now we take back to the b pawn. We're not actually interested in this pawn anymore. We're interested in this king. And we have an open b file, and we quickly just shuffle our pieces here. And say rook h1, just finally defending this guy forever, because maybe we're going to play c5, bishop's here. Maybe we put the knight here. Now we just castle. And you think, well, isn't g5 weak? Sure, but who cares? Like, say queen g4, just gonna go try to grab the pawn immediately. No big deal. We just bring the rook to the b file. They take the pawn. So what? We can play a5 here. And the point of a5 is that we're gonna advance this pawn up the board, create a weakness. Yes, we're down a pawn, but it really means nothing. Knight f3 is the best for white. That was queen b7, and already white is like super struggling. The best move is something like king to d2, which who in their right mind is going to play king to d2? Best, probably most natural is play b3, but now we get a4, and like this is a total lights out situation. It's really, really, really tough for white to hold this. We have a huge initiative. This bishop sucks. It's not doing anything. It's going to take forever for it to get back into the game and do something meaningful. Our king is totally safe. This queen is not going to mate us alone. This knight doesn't have anywhere to come that's helpful at all. We just have a truly wonderful attacking position here. So this is g5 if they don't take the pawn. Here my opponent did take, and well, this is my whole point. I have a check and an attack here, and queen to e3 is the best move. If you drop the bishop back, it's really not any better because now we can just grab this. We're winning a rook. So queen takes queen to e5. The queen blocks, and we come here, and we're threatening to win a rook anyway. The only move that's not totally lost immediately is playing bishop takes, and we take back, and then castles. And they're just giving up a rook. The point is they give up the rook, they play knight to c3, this guy's defended, we come out, and okay, we've won a ton of material, but we're pretty far behind in development, so that's why the eval isn't better than it even is. This is obviously a great position. This is the best, or one of the best. They're going to get some of their material back. We create a hole for our rook while attacking this bishop, so our plan is to try to get out. They can come shunt us here, but now we can just grab this pawn. Yes, they grab this rook. So what? We play knight to e7, and while we're not up a rook anymore, we're up a whole buttload of pawns. We have connected passers in the center of the board. This is the best that they can do. Instead, after queen takes b2, my opponent played queen to c3, which initially looks like a really great idea. The point is that they're defending the rook and they're attacking our rook, and I'm sure that they expect that I'm just going to take the queen. Didn't though. At bishop b4, which just wins the queen on the spot. The game is over. They took, doesn't matter. We take, and they drop back. We win the queen, and this isn't even interesting. We give this check, and we go pick up this rook. And my opponent played on for a whole bunch more moves, all the way to mate. I'm not going to make you guys take a look at that. Maybe I'll give you a peek at the final position, which was this. But yeah, this G5 idea is actually really cool when we get this lines where the pawn is, where they try to defend the pawn with the bishop. And I hope that you guys get a chance to play this in your games. And thanks a lot. We'll check you out. Bye-bye.